All right, here we go.
What's good, everybody? I'm Robert Dickens Jr.
This is Ryan Reed.
This is Elanders Frazier.
This is John Gaal, and you're listening to Volta.
Changing the conversation
For percussion educators,
designers,
and performers.
What's up, everyone? Thank you so much for joining for another episode with Volta Percussion. I am John Gaal with my good friends Ryan Reed, Elanders Frazier, and Mr. Robert Dickens Jr. What's up, everyone? How we doing?
Great.
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. And we're thankful for you guys listening to our podcast and continuing the conversation. This episode is actually part 3 of what we've been talking about, advocacy. The first part we talked about, and you guys are going to have to help me out because I remember more of part 2 because I've talked more about part 2, to be honest. Part 1 was just in general, right?
Yeah, advocating for students primarily
For the programs.
Mm-hmm. That's important. So advocating for your program, the students. Part 2 is more about advocating for yourself, especially if you're just starting out. And now part 3, tonight we want to kind of wrap up our conversation. Who knows? We may do part 4, part 5. I was joking with the guys earlier about making this a Fast and Furious part. What is it, 9, 10 videos?
It's about family.
But no, part 3 tonight, we're going to wrap up by talking about advocating if you're a first-time director, advocating if you're like a 5th year, 10-year, a veteran seasoned warrior, you've been in the trenches for a while. And then also, very importantly, away from the teaching aspect, more of a design consulting aspect, advocating when you're working with other artists and bringing to life those shows, what needs to be in place for you to not go insane, basically. So, Ryan, what are your thoughts? Let's have you hit it off. You're just starting out. You just got your college degree. Or maybe you said, screw it, I don't want to go to college. I just want to be a tech the entire time. You're just starting out. You're in charge of the program. What's on the top of your list of advocacy of what do you need to be successful?
So I think in those first couple steps, like you got your first gig, I think the first thing that I would do, and the first thing that I remember doing, is kind of just getting a lay of the land, like going in probably a little bit early and just seeing like, all right, what's the program looked like? What's the inventory situation like? Because we can do amazing work, but if every pair of drumsticks is broken or mismatched, or the drums are being held together by bubble gum and duct tape, you're gonna be able to do a job, but it might not be the job that you necessarily had hoped to sign up for. So for me, it was going in. There it is. For me, it was always going in and getting the lay of the land and seeing like what has been there, what's been going on that maybe we don't need to change right away. Because again, anytime you take over a program, you don't want to just swing the full hammer and change everything, because that's how you get upheaval. But I think you got to figure out what you want to change, what you need to be quote unquote successful that first year, which is going to be different from what you quantify as success in year 5. But just advocating for those things. Like for me, the first step at my first gig was we needed drum heads. Like we need drum heads, and there's not a line item in the budget for percussion. They've kind of just been like surviving off what they have. So it was me going into like booster meetings going, hey, we gotta have this stuff. We gotta have me going to the directors and then going to the booster meetings going, hey, we kind of got to have this stuff to give the kids like an experience that's comparable to the other programs we're seeing around us. Otherwise, we're going to have kids just go like, hey, why don't we have, good drumsticks that aren't just held together by the tape that I'm swinging them like a lasso by, and that kind of thing. So I think that's the most important thing, is getting the lay of the land and then building your, for lack of a better term, it's just your 5-year plan off of that, of what you need for a long term. But I think immediately it's like, what do I need immediately? Heads, sticks, mallets to give the kids an experience. Forget success, just to give the kids an experience that first year.
Yeah, that first year as a teacher, you're going to be drinking from a fire hydrant. We've talked about that analogy multiple times because you may have the best education in the world, but when you're in the trenches, everyone has their own way of doing things. I'm talking specifically with administration, counselors, scheduling, your downtown administration, et cetera, et cetera. So getting the lay of the land, really figuring out who do I need to report to, like who's my higher up, not only within the band, but also maybe my APs, my assistant principals, who are my counselors I need to talk to. Don't be like me and try to change everything your first year. It was kind of during COVID, so I didn't have too much of a backlash. Uh, but if you're trying to disturb things too much too soon, it's not going to help you out long term. E, what do you think? Besides trying to get the lay of the land, what are some top priority things you should be focusing on?
It, it's tough because I every school I've gone into, I've always gone in as a as a full-blown like contract instructor, right? I've never gone in with the intent of trying to become
being around kids 8 hours a day.
Right, exactly. Right. I've never gone in with the intent like one day I'll be the full band director. Like that was a goal when I first got to college, and then about 2.5 years into college, I was like, pass. Right. But I do absolutely adore teaching students and mentoring and all that jazz, but just part-time. So I think part of what I advocated for was my ability to have that autonomy, which allows me to flex my schedule to be the most benefit for those students during the time that I have available. And I've mentioned this a couple of times on the podcast before, that when I first started, I was working at multiple schools. So a lot of my first year, at least what I was advocating for was, hey, I can help your program, but only on Tuesdays. Hey, I can help your program, but only on Wednesdays from 1 to 5. Hey, I can help your program, but just on Thursdays and Fridays. Hey, I can help you program, So really, I was bartering with how I could be of assistance, but only within the parameters of what I could do with the school schedule that I had, because I was in college full time. I also had a part-time job at a movie theater. And then, of course, trying to make time to spend with my family, and then with, holding down multiple schools. So I think I was really advocating to be able to do as much as I could within the limitations of time that I had. So, time is such a finite thing that we have available. And so even outside of the money, trying to figure out how to balance your time is so important. So really advocating for the time that you have available. And part of that too, like a big part of that conversation was, when I'm here, I need the percussion ensemble alone. Like, it does not benefit me if I'm here for the 2.5 hours. Like, one school I was only going on like a Tuesday, like for 2.5 hours. I was like, if I'm here on Tuesdays, I need them outside of the stadium in percussion ensemble, the entire percussion ensemble. You take the band, do whatever you need to do, but I need the percussion ensemble here, because that's where they're going to receive the most benefit from me, is if I have alone time with them. And then on Thursdays, you can bring them in ensemble when I'm not here, and they can apply those items that we discuss when I'm here. But if I'm stuck inside of the full band rehearsal, we talked this earlier, standing still, waiting for y'all to go set the set, I can't be as effective as I could if I were running the ensemble rehearsal by myself. So that was one of the things that I really fought for early in my career, was making sure that I always had time with the ensemble by myself. If it wasn't for the full rehearsal, I had to at least get an hour. Like that was like the non-negotiable. I at least need an hour at the beginning of the rehearsal to kind of set a level set with the group to make sure that we can function as a percussion ensemble so that they can benefit the entire band program. And then that's going to elevate your program. And we talked about this in the previous parts. It's just about how can what I do make the most for the other person, right? Not just like it's all about me, what do I need, but how can what am I doing benefit you? But that was always the conversation is if I get the time, it's going to better benefit the entire band. The better that this percussion ensemble plays together, the more efficient they're going to be with being able to help the full band ensemble be able to play together. If they play like trash and they're always tearing, they don't help the full ensemble play together, right? And you can't lean on them for support because they're always ripping apart. So I really need to get them inside of a functioning percussion ensemble so that when we put them back with the full band, they really can be of benefit and you can use them as kind of an anchor point for the entire band to say, hey, everybody lean into the percussion ensemble. They are really holding this chart together. They can be your ears while we're playing through whatever piece of music. So that was, I'd say, definitely the first 5-6 years. And even still to now, like we talk about non-negotiables, like that's one of the things that I've always fought for is sectional time. It's just making sure that I've got time alone with the percussion section to kind of not only gel the group together, but just to make sure that like we are a functioning body of music excellence outside of the total program.
So let me see if I can review this. Ryan, you were saying more about equipment maintenance, making sure you have the proper tools in place when you're first starting out. That's what you advocate for. You gave the example of stick tape, sticks, drum heads. Elanders, you were saying the importance of sectional rehearsal time, not wasting, your specific time. And then Rob, what would you say is the biggest priority in your mind when it comes to just starting out advocating for yourself?
I would say this is kind of advocating for me, but also advocating for the program as well. I would say staffing. Just because depending on your age or your band director's age or their experience, they may not understand why you need, the staff that you might need to try to achieve the level that you're, trying to go for. And I think for me, I think the biggest thing has been just trying to show them a model where they can get that. Because in a lot of instances, people think, oh, okay, well, like it's just a high school. Let's say it's 10 to 15 kids in the battery. Like they're thinking from their perspective of if they were a band director and every day they stand on the podium and they have 70 kids all in one, at one time, like that's not a terrible student to teacher ratio, but it's doable in their mind as it relates to what it is that they're trying to achieve. But they may not necessarily understand that from a marching perspective. Obviously, that's not ideal, but like you could get more supplement by having other people come in to help with those individual things. And the best way is to give them a model that allows them, to invest at the level that they're capable of. Like E was saying, like you can only come on one day. Like maybe if you're the director, like you might not have section coaches every single day, but you could have them come in for, a day, and maybe that only costs you $75. You know what I mean? For, hey, I have a snare tech, I have a quad tech, I have a bass tech, and I always have a front ensemble tech because they always need to be there. They're the most important person outside the director, in my opinion, because they probably got the most kids. But okay, that only cost us, you know, $150, $225, but the kids are getting that individual help that they need. So on the other day of indoor, where maybe we can't afford to have them all the time, like they still have gotten that individual information. And I think that sometimes the band director or whoever you're working with, they might just need a little education on like why you need those things. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. There are certain things that cross over, right? Like it's just quads. It's just bass drum. It's just snare drum. They all play rhythms, don't they? They all use sticks, don't they? Like they all have the same thing. So technically you could use one person to instruct all these different people. And it's like, yes and no, right? Yes, in that you know, they all do have the same a similar skill set because they're all hitting some type of membrane and they're moving while doing it. But at the same time, like the instruments, if we're taking them to the highest level possible, like they have a different curricular nature. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to hit a snare drum head the way that you're going to hit a bass drum head. You're not going to hit a bass 5 head grip wise or playing wise the way that you're going to hit a bass drum 1. You're not going to move around the quads and tell them to play the exact same way that you would tell them if they were on a set of snare drums, because the tension is higher, right? Them moving around the drums is a little bit different. So obviously as the director, like you can continue to grow and always level up your knowledge if you don't have someone that's available to you, but you should not settle for, I can't have these things, right? I can't get my kids this specialized knowledge. Maybe you can't get it at the depth that other people can, but find a way. I would be trying to find a way that I can get that specialized knowledge in, even if it's just like little spurts, even if it's just band camp, or it's one day a week, or it's the first, you know, every 2 weeks or something. Like I'm going to be advocating for that, because there's no way that what I'm able to do as a director and what the kids are able to do is going to rise to the highest possible level without spreading out that responsibility.
Well said.
Yeah, nice.
I think there's a couple of things that I would love to expand upon, and I'm sure we can talk a little bit more about. 2 words that E had talked about and Rob talked on a little bit: autonomy and mentorship. That as like a first year or a newer director, I think are pretty huge, especially as a percussion director. Because Rob was talking about like sometimes band directors approach like percussion as through the lens of the band director. But I think sometimes we have to advocate for ourselves to be like, hey, I need, you know, one, as a new teacher, I need to make my own mistakes so I can learn and help better the program in the long term. And that doesn't mean, hey, let me fail and totally screw this year up. But it means, you know, it means we all got to learn a little bit. Like first year band directors were not doing things perfect. And I think that's also where like that mentor or somebody else that you can talk to comes into place. Not even just for the fact of like, hey, help me learn how to be a better teacher, but like, hey, do I just have somebody? This is something I was not good at until just in the last couple of years. Hey, do I have somebody I can just vent to when I need to, so that I'm like not going into rehearsal frustrated, or, you know, that kind of thing. Like finding somebody that you can sit down at an establishment with and just unload, have a Coke, that kind of stuff, and just learn from and just vent to goes a long way. And not even the learning aspect of it. Like anymore, my mentors are more of like, hey, can I just vent for a second and then ask for your opinion?
Yes.
So I think that's a huge thing that we don't always think about as like first year new directors. We're always like gung ho, like, let me get in there and just teach the kids and do all these things. And it's like, no, you need a sounding board. And I think that's one thing, if I could go back in time, I would smack myself and be like, you need somebody to talk to.
I would agree. I think that's also something that if you're a band director and you're listening to this, and you're a head band director, maybe you're not a percussionist. Man, I think that that's something that would be very beneficial because of the fact that every band director is not in a well-populated area with tons and tons of great educators. Maybe you have someone that's a former student and maybe they're not super experienced, but they want to be an educator, or someone that's in the area that you want to take the program to a certain level, but they don't necessarily have that knowledge. Like if you can connect them with other people that can mentor them, maybe they can be an answer to your program and a benefit to your program if you're willing to develop them through your own professional connections. I'd also like to say, just shout out to, the band directors that I've worked with over the years. I've had some great band directors that have put me in touch with some people that I talk to on a regular basis that are phenomenal, that have been doing it longer than me and that helped me a lot throughout my career. Like, I think that that's something that might be underutilized, specifically those that have been teaching for a long time. You have a network that's deeper than maybe some of the people that are coming under you that don't have as much experience.
Yeah, that network of age and experience is so important. And I think the older that we get, I know just speaking with us, we're kind of at that middle age. We see the importance of that community and that network. Obviously we communicate very often, and as a younger person, you are always in a position to where I think you are trying to prove something, that you don't really value the community as much, because in your mind it can be a distraction to what you're building. And it doesn't have to be a distraction to what you're building. It can actually be a benefit to what you're building. And you get that when you understand that as you get older. But I remember when I was younger, I didn't want anything to take my eyes off the prize. Everything was potentially a distraction, right? But it's like now I understand, like, my community makes me stronger, makes me wiser, makes me think about things in different ways, and y'all challenge my beliefs and my thought process, and they spark new ideas, et cetera, et cetera. And those are things that, those are moments that I look back. It's like when you're sitting in a room by yourself and you're beating your head against the wall trying to figure out what the answer to the problem is. If you had that community, it'd be a little bit easier. So something you can pick up from this podcast if you're listening or watching.
Well, that's a good segue into the next part. So we kind of talked about, as you're just starting out, what should you be fighting for? But now let's move in the segue. If you've been doing this for a while, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe you're a seasoned veteran warrior. What are you advocating now? Do the topics, do the categories change, or are they still the same?
For me, I think there's some things that change for me. I think it's at that point, I think excuse me.
And we'll pass it over to Ryan now.
All right. I think there's some things that do change slightly. I think there may have been issues that maybe I'd seen earlier in the program that maybe it wasn't necessarily a time for me to address it, because I didn't necessarily have the track record to say, hey, I think that we should change this, or maybe this is something that we should go in a different direction. But I feel like once you have that experience with people and you've established a positive track record, I think there are some things that maybe you would advocate for that you wouldn't have advocated for earlier. It might be equipment wise, like, hey, I want to advocate for the fact that, we've taken care of the equipment that we have for this amount of time. Like, I think that it's important that we upgrade, because I've shown that, like, our students are, responsible, and, or it might be something for as it relates to the design process of, like, hey, we've always done music first. And during Indoor Drumline, I've done visual first, and they've done these things that have been successful consistently. From a competitive standpoint, would this be something that you would be open to changing in our fall design process? Like that might be something that you, or that I know that I would probably advocate for if I had that tenure and that level of connection with that band program over time, that I wouldn't necessarily advocate for within the first couple years or so.
Yeah, I definitely think some things can change. I think it usually ends up just being more and better. Like I advocate for more stuff, and I advocate for better stuff. Like I talked about with the beginning teacher, just going in and getting the lay of the land and figuring out what you need to give them, the kids, an experience, and the community an experience with the band program. You know, you start to advocate then for like, okay, now we need matching gear, and we need matching gear because the tuning tendencies are now the same, so I can teach the kids one strategy instead of a bunch of different strategies. It'll make the sound of the band better for this reason. It'll do this, it'll do that, it'll do, it'll allow us to turn the instruments that we have into practice instruments that the kids can take home. So I feel like there are things that you will always advocate for. You'll advocate for more money for instruments. You'll advocate for more money for staff. Like almost always, you'll advocate for more money for music. You'll advocate for better equipment and all of these things, more support, more community support, more all of these things. I think the asks will get bigger, but the track you bring behind you, the success you bring behind you, will hopefully help with that. Like we talked about it a couple episodes ago of like, at the school that I'm at, the school's been in existence for 7 years now. And like over the last year, we won a marching band show, our indoor group medaled, our top band played at conference. And that got us to a point where now my job is full-time through the district. And we've got, so they gave us a larger sum of lesser money from the COVID money to help support and enhance the band program and the experience that we give people and that kind of thing. So I think what you advocate for will either help lead to more success or be built on from the success that you bring at your current levels. And some things will change, like maybe you want to do something a different way, those kinds of things. But those are usually like an ask, an achieve, and then you're kind of done with it. Like once you change the system, you're not going to keep changing the system back and forth. But I think the things that you're going to continuously ask for, money and support mostly, are things that you're always going to have to ask for.
Yeah, I like what you said, that yes, you always have to ask for stuff, but I think what you're asking, the quality is always improving. And when you said that, I'm thinking of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Just as a quick refresher for those that don't know what I'm talking about, or you haven't finished your music education stuff or your psychology classes or whatnot. So Maslow's talking about basically at the fundamental basis for any human being to survive, their physiological needs need to be met, right? Breathing, food, water, shelter, clothing, things like that. Once those things are met, the next level would be safety and security, health, employment, family, stuff like that. Then love and belonging, self-esteem, and finally at the very end, self-actualization, right? Creativity, meaning and purpose, etc., etc. And I think you can also take that into the musical realm. Like at the basic needs, when you're just starting out, you need, in my mind, we each have our opinion, which is awesome. But of course, mine's correct, and you need inventory. If you're just starting out, you need to go and do an inventory of all your percussion stuff and find out where you're lacking. And that could be sticks, mallets, heads. You guys have already talked about that. But as you progress, and again, this is coming from a perspective of you're building a program, right? Not a perspective of you come into a program already developed. What's the next thing? That would be, I think, level 3, level 4 on the 5 level of needs, I guess you could say. Basic 1, do you have the materials you need to be successful? And as your tenure grows and as your way of teaching improves and the students' achievements outpace each other, and you start getting the administration support and you start getting the achievements of the band, and as everything's growing, like Ryan mentioned, you can start asking for better quality. Like for me, a better quality of equipment would be, well, now I can finally start asking for an example would be Critalis. When you first walk into the program, you're not like, I want to go buy some Critalis, which if anyone's trying to buy Critalis, you're looking at 13 to 1500 just for one octave. And that does not include the bags or whatnot. Like that's a huge ask for either a band boosters or a district to get a very specialized instrument for a very specialized timbre that you may not even play that much in the marching band. Again, coming from a perspective of you're building a program up, or percussion ensemble needs. I mean, the basic, you're just getting sticks, mounts, heads. Do you have enough toms, right? Do you have bongos? Do you have your sleigh bells for your Christmas time? All that stuff. But now, as time progresses, you can start asking for higher quality. You know, that Philharmonic snare drum, concert snare drum, those Critalis sets, those, a whole new, Rob, I think you mentioned this earlier, a whole new battery, right? And because then you have some skin in the game and your administration is asking, well, why do you need that? Well, look at what I've done in the past. Now I'm trying to push my students to the next level of grade 4, grade 5 pieces, right? And then you start succeeding in that. What's the next level? Okay, student creativity, student exploration of music, student expression, composition, taking students to TMEA, taking students to PACE-IT, taking students to perform at WGI, right? As you keep on going higher and higher, your quality of the asks, I think, greatly improves.
Tablets.
What?
I need laptops for all of them so we can start writing music now.
Exactly, right? You hey, we can't do electronics, we can only do like that, what, the SPS, what was that, like 12 pad drum pad
DTX.
Oh,
electronics,
the DTX or something like that.
DTX, right? Okay, we just got DTX, but now next couple of years, okay, we finally get to upgrade to a MacBook or a Mac Mini, or now we get to have more speakers. Maybe instead of just
controller.
passive, now we're going active, or now we're getting 4 speaker stacks, or now we get to upgrade to a wireless system. Right? These asks, you don't ask for, hey, I'd like $1 million my first year, because you don't, who are you? Shut up. Right? I don't even know if you're gonna last.
Underline that last thing that John Gaal said, if you were a first year person. That was some very high quality advice there, ladies and gents.
What was that advice? What was that advice again?
Nah, don't be asking for a whole bunch of stuff. Like, who are you?
Oh, year one, who are you?
You're like, hey, I'm looking for some line arrays. I really think it would make the group sound way better. You know, if we had just rosewood, can we get some like a marimba 1 5 octave? There's some pieces that I want to play that we just,
I'm glad you brought that up, because now I'm at that spot, at least with my program. Again, this is from you're building a program from the ground up, basic needs. But I'm finally now where I can ask, okay, I really want a 5 octave marimba. I think it's pretty standard. All high schools should have at least one, so that you're introducing that type of rep. Because if students are going into the college as a music, they need to be able to play 5 octave rep literature. And of course, you're not going to ask for a 5 octave your first year just coming out of green school. But I would also say, and I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts, instead of building a program up, you are asked miraculously, oh no, that's your first year. Let's say you've been doing, again, you're a veteran seasoned warrior, and you finally get your dream job teaching at whatever school. They don't need the basics anymore, right? What are you trying to advocate then?
I think you're trying to find what additional resources you need to maintain or elevate. And now I'm looking back at what Rob mentioned earlier, is like, is my staffing adequate? Is my parental support adequate? Do the kids have the support in terms of lesson structure and availability? Do we have adequate rehearsal space? Right? Like we talk about a dream, you know, I it's hard for me to think about dream programs just because of where I'm at, because, you know, Northwest Florida is notorious for not having a lot of resources. The most that we hope for is that everything works. But you know, if anyone ever won the lottery and blessed us with a program and we got all brand new equipment and stuff like that, that would be a dream for me. Like if we had all brand new equipment, and let's say I started with just, okay, first school, you can have any equipment that you want free of charge. Now, what do you want? Well, now that I've got the equipment, I need the means to be able to take care of this equipment, meaning that I need to make sure that we've got all the covers, we've got all the uh, uh, rain gear, the, what do you call them, tarps, we've got adequate
Courage.
what's the word,
Ratchet straps.
We've got adequate like zone
Cases.
coverage from where we rehearse to the band room, so that in the event that we have to transit from one place to another, we're not, you know, out in the rain somewhere crazy to where things can get damaged. You know, I'm thinking about, how do we transit our brand new equipment from place to place? Do we need to get a trailer to where we are actively moving the equipment by another vehicle from band room to the field, so that it's not rolling around on gravel, since it's all brand new and it's just damaging the wheels of the brand new equipment? Like, that's the kind of stuff that I would start thinking about. You know, I think about it like my sneakers. When I first get a brand new pair of sneakers, the first thing I'm thinking about is, okay, I can only wear these here, here, and here, because the roads that I travel here and here are going to start damaging my soles, because I know what those streets feel like. Although when I walk here and here, it's all pretty good concrete, so I'm safe here, right? And that's how I think about it. And then I know once my sneakers get to a certain age, now I can start wearing them to these other places where it's all right if they get a little bit more dirty, right? But I can't be wearing them out to the muddy place on day one, because I know they're going to get messed up. It's going to be more of a headache. So it's kind of like I think about it in that kind of frame of reference too. But it really is tough when you kind of have everything out. Like, I remember having that conversation with Joe when he first got that gig at Vandergrift. It's like, what do I do when you kind of get dropped and you've got everything? It's like, what do I do now? And it's like, you know, you really have to start thinking outside the box of, you kind of get kind of blessed inside of the situation. Now it's like, where do I go from here? And that's something that you should consider, you know, as an instructor, because it could happen. You know, you could be in a situation where you've got all the resources at your disposal. Now what do you do? So
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine, because he and his percussion team just played at PASIC, not this year, but last year. And I was like, so what are you doing now? I mean, that's like a pinnacle of a percussion achievement, is having the honor to play at PASIC in front of thousands of people.
mm-hmm.
I don't remember what he said, so I'll have to get back with you. So keep tuning in, everyone, as I'll get back to it eventually. But yeah, if you're a seasoned warrior, seasoned vet, I like saying warrior, because honestly, like, we're fighting in the trenches as we're teaching day in and day out. It is a battle. But hopefully you enjoy it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. Please chime in and let us know your thoughts, because we love to keep on continuing the conversation. But we're not done yet. There's one more aspect we haven't talked about in case of advocacy, and that is with the design standpoint. And I'll open up the floor to my friends here. Is this going to be a part 4, or you think we can, continue this conversation right now?
I think we can finish it. Yeah.
All right, boom. Let's do a rapid fire. All right, you're on design team. You're either writing the choreo, writing the drill, writing the music. Boom, 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 boom. I want to go quick. You have 10 seconds. It's going to go Ryan, E, Rob. I don't write for anyone, so I'm going to stay out of this. Ryan E. Rob. Ryan E. Rob. Ryan E. Rob. Boom, boom, boom. What you're advocating for. Think about it. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it. And we're just going to spit fire. You ready? Go.
I think the first thing you have to advocate for as part of a team is spots for you to highlight the part of the band that you design for, whether it be a visual moment, a percussion moment, a guard moment, a double tonguing moment, a whatever moment. Like, you got to advocate for those windows to showcase those sections.
Boom. Okay. E. Faster. We gotta go faster.
You've got to advocate for the time to be able to do your job. And that means being able to plan in the design process, soon enough to where everyone has the availability to be able to do their part of the process so that the kids get their product in a timely manner and it's not behind the timeline because whoever's starting the process started late.
Rob.
I'm gonna say production timeline. Just speaking, I guess, from a visual standpoint of maybe depending on the way that your band does things, and then maybe they start with music or maybe they come up with some type of concept, but as a drill writer or choreographer or whatever, like, you might be getting things last because everyone else has to do their job so that it gets to you. I would advocate for a clear production timeline so that things don't get backed up, so that we all have enough time to iterate and do things multiple times and negotiate on time.
Ryan.
Oh, I didn't have a second one. I have a question, though. John, if we can slow your pace down.
We will. We'll come back to it. Ryan, you're out.
Okay.
E, your turn.
What was the question again?
E, you're out.
Right.
Rob, last one standing.
I'm gonna say clear roles on the design team.
Clear roles. All right, Rob, you are the winner of our Spitfire round for today. Clear roles of a team. Okay, we'll slow it down. Just want to change the pace right there. Ryan, you have a question. What is it?
Yeah, so this is kind of a question that I guess I'm going through right now, and I just want to hear everybody else's opinion on this. Like, when you're advocating for yourself as a designer or as a composer, because this, again, doesn't just have to be through the lens of the marching arts. This can be, composing percussion ensemble pieces or concert band pieces or whatnot. Is there a difference between advocating and just straight advertising? I think sometimes I struggle with, like, how do I advocate for myself to be an asset to programs without it sounding like, please hire me? Are those
like marketing?
Yeah, or are those just are advocating and advertising the same thing, and we just need to not look at advertising as like a dirty word almost?
No, I say they're different.
I'd say they're different.
Say.
I'd say they're different. I think advocating really is, I'd say they're on two different islands. I'd say advocating is on an island where you're already in that system, because it's very difficult to advocate inside of a system that you don't exist in, right? You have to be indentured into that system to be able to advocate, unless you're advocating for somebody else, right? But if you're advocating on behalf of yourself and you're new to that, then really what you're doing is you're advertising, right? So now it's like, I'm new to this. I would like to be in your system. Now you're not advocating, you're advertising. And that advertisement can be as good or as bad as it needs to be, right? But your advertisement is the sum total of what you have accomplished, right? So, I mean, if your accomplishments are great, and we've talked about how you can really build your resume over the last 3 episodes, and advocating for yourself and putting yourself in a position to where your resume and the product that you've produced and what you've done has really shown what you're capable of as a designer, as an instructor, as a leader of a program, as a mentor, then that all serves the greater good of your advertisement to say, if you would like me to be a part of your program, I would be bringing all of what I do for this program here as well. And then we can also discuss what further things I can do to help build this program once I have had time to really dig in based on the time that I'm spending here.
Yeah, I would say one, the great Clifford Harris said, "It ain't tricking if you got it." Meaning, if it's on your resume, it's not bragging. It's just a statement of fact as to what it is that you're able to do. You know what I mean? So if you were to tell a program, hey, I can design for all, skill or ability levels, whether it be scholastic or independent, etc. And that wouldn't necessarily be bragging. You know what I mean? That's just like a statement of fact that all of your resume and everything in your portfolio points to you having success on all of those levels.
Look it up.
It is. Google me. Google me. I mean, like, that's just the truth. So I feel like if you look at it from that standpoint, I think it's a little bit more sobering that it's not, because I feel like the advertising side of it kind of gives off like the kind of
sleazy car salesman.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Car salesman that's like about to sell you something that doesn't work. And like, advertising is more like just drawing attention to something and drawing attention to like, hey, design is really important. Hey, this is really important, rather than advocating and I look at advocating from this standpoint, not necessarily, although I am advocating for myself to be in a certain position for a school to do something for them that does benefit me. My thought process is I'm advocating for this school to have a better outcome because my record is trustworthy. You know what I'm saying? So if you give me the opportunity to do this, I'm advocating for you leveling up your program because I know I have the ability to do that. And I know that I'm also, I'm also like bought in and I'm responsible enough to do that as well. So I feel like when I think about it from that aspect, I don't feel as bad about the whole advocating thing versus advertising, because I know I'm not advertising myself. I'm advocating for this program being better. And I know that I'm not going to take on any project where I'm not convinced that I can level it up and make it better.
I got an analogy.
Go ahead.
All right. Let me hit y'all with this one. All right. So Apple does not advertise their products consistently, right? They advertise like once a year, maybe twice a year at their conferences, at WWDC and at their conference in the fall, where they actively put up the specs and prices for their products. What you get throughout the year is marketing that simply shows you what their product offers. But when's the last time you saw an ad for a MacBook or an iPhone that threw a price up at the end of it? The price is negligible because people are going to pay for it because they know what it can do. They know what it does, right? And when I was thinking about this analogy, I was like, but I saw a T-Mobile commercial talking about iPhones the other day. It's a T-Mobile commercial. It's not an Apple commercial. T-Mobile's doing the advertisement because T-Mobile's trying to get you to get T-Mobile service. Apple didn't produce that commercial. Apple don't need to produce the commercial. They produced a product. So when you think about it, if they only advertise twice per year, they are still selling the most products pretty much in the world for devices that they only advertise actively twice a year. And it's because of the quality of the stuff that they put out. And then of course they market, right? And marketing has a lot to do with just, hey, here's just a reminder of the quality of the products that I offer. But aren't we all self-marketing always? Every time you produce something, when you design something, that is marketing, that is promotion. Every time your group goes out and performs, that is marketing, that is promotion. That is why we want the best product on the court, because if your name is attached to it and it is attached to your person and what you do and how you impacted it, that is marketing. And so when somebody comes back around and they say, hey man, I saw Chattahoochee, last winter, and that jump was fire. Who's with that program? Oh, that's Rob Dickens Jr. Okay. So now they go look Rob up, right? There wasn't no price on the floor, but it was marketing, right? Now they can go reach out to Rob and discuss pricing, right? But maybe, Rob's got his website that's got the prices of the stuff that he's out, and maybe he doesn't, because you don't have to always actively do that. Pricing is subject to, because pricing can be reflective of whatever it is that you're trying to do, and it can also be very tailored to the product that you're trying to produce. But we're constantly marketing. I think the advertising aspect comes into play sometimes when we're trying to consider, do I have to actively advertise, or do I really just need to consider, do I need to really just market? And do I really need to just actively market more of what I'm capable of doing? And then the marketing is what is actively advertising my services, without me actively having to go out and do a social media post of, these are my prices for this, and this, right? Like, people will come to you if your product is great, as long as they can see the product, but you have to get the product in front of the people, because that's just how humans work. You know what I mean? The more they see it, the more they'll be attracted to it. And then, they have to have access to the individual to be able to access it. So.
And the more people see it at a high quality, the
For sure.
easier it is for you to advocate for yourself, no matter where you are in your educational career and your program, to take you and your program and your students ultimately to that next level.
There's the tie-in.
Look at there. Full circle.
Beautiful.
Full circle.
Beautiful.
Before we close out, is there anything that we are missing that we want to expand on? I know I did that rapid fire on the design, and really Robert E. kind of said the same thing: production timeline, doing your job, making sure your role is clearly defined. And Ryan took more of a you're in the process of the design itself, and you're highlighting those aspects. Do we want to dive a little bit deeper in there, or do we feel like we've covered everything adequately or extensively?
I feel like we've covered a lot of things. The only thing that I would say, if I were to go back as an educator, is to make sure that you document everything that you've done more often. Like, document the
I would agree with that
way more often, so that when you are talking to people, they can see your track record. You know what I mean? Like, reading it on a piece of paper is one thing, but like people seeing like where your students started and then seeing where they ended is a much bigger and much more convincing argument or advocation for like you and like what it is that you can do. So I would definitely say, if you are starting out and like, you're just getting started with what it is that you're doing, like try to record as much as you can of the process. And things that, even if it's not that great, just where they started. And then of course, by the end, you got to do your job and make sure that they are great. But seeing that transformation in between the two is a big selling point, I would say, to anyone, to where you don't necessarily have to air quotes, like sell yourself. Like you're just showing them how the cookies, this is the product.
No, I'm glad you said that, Rob, because I've also been thinking about that. I haven't done so personally on an individual basis for my students. I've done it more collectively for the percussion ensemble, for the band, keeping a folder in Google Drive to kind of see the progress through the years. But if you do that for your individual students, of where they start at the beginning of the year, maybe every 3 months, 6 months, whatnot, and you show that to the parents, man, I think you'll get that buy-in so much more. You need a check written out because you need better equipment. That parent, they're seeing that you're investing in their child. They're seeing that growth trajectory visually through that video. I mean, I think they'll want to jump in a lot more. And again, many, as my dad says, many hands make light work. Many hands make light work. Light work. You just get them involved. Boom. It's just exponential growth right there. Awesome. Awesome tidbit at the end, Rob. Thank you so much. Hey, guys, thank you so much for hanging out and kind of continuing the conversation. I think we can finally end this chapter of advocacy, unless those who are listening want to continue the conversation and keep feeding the fuel, the fire, with your thoughts on maybe some aspects that we missed, right? Maybe we can do a part 4. I'm telling you, I'm that Fast and Furious franchise. We're just going to Advocacy Part 9.
Because it's about family.
It is. But thank you again, everyone, for listening. If you do have further questions or you'd like to continue the conversation, email us at voltapercussion@gmail.com. You can also check us out on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, social media. Hit the like, hit the share, comment below on our Instagram page. Let us know that you're listening and help us continue the conversation with you by, let us know that you appreciate what we're doing. Or if you don't, let us know if you want to talk about something else. We're open to that too, right? So this is Mr. John Gaal signing off. This is Ryan Reed signing off. Elanders Frazier signing off. And Mr. Robert Dickens Jr. Everyone, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.